Okay, welcome everybody. Today we will be talking about protecting your practice with Samad and Kelly from mConsent and the Compliancy Group. My name is Zach, I'll be hosting, and we'll be getting a quick introduction of everyone, starting with Samad. Samad is the CEO and founder of SRS Web Solutions, which is a Minneapolis-based company that developed a leading dental software platform, which is mConsent. mConsent's an all-in-one digital platform solution for dental offices, which help front offices go paperless, thereby improving dental office productivity and improving patient experience. Samad has a passion for improving patient experience and helping dental practices grow, which has also led him to write The Art of Patient Re-Engagement: How to Win Back Your Inactive Patients. His hope is that this book will help dental practices achieve higher patient retention rates, increase revenue, and provide better patient care. So welcome, Samad.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you for elaborated introduction there. Thank you.
Absolutely. Also today we have Kelly. Kelly has over 25 years of customer service experience, including a background in retail banking and accounting. She is currently a senior compliance account manager and director of dental relations for Compliancy Group. That's where she advises ADA members on healthcare compliance. Kelly's extensive experience in security provides her with a unique understanding into the world of compliance. Through this experience, she effectively communicates the government regulations, and necessary standards of compliancy to dental practices and other healthcare organizations, breaking down the complexities of the law. So welcome in, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Samad. Thank you for the invite. Happy to be here.
Thank you for coming over, Kelly. Always nice to have you here.
Thank you. It's always interesting when you get the HIPAA lady on a podcast, right?
Well, great. Well, again, title of today is Protecting Your Practice. So just to get us started, I want to start with you, Kelly.
Oh my goodness, such a great question. And full disclosure, Zach, thank you so much for the introduction once again. But at the beginning of it all, before I went over to the crazy side of regulatory compliance, I worked at a dental practice for close to 15 years. And I always joke around about the overwhelming feeling I had when I took over the big old binder of HIPAA, for lack of a better word. Not really a joking matter. It's a lot to take on. And then you hear that the vendors have to be HIPAA compliant as well. You try to figure out, first off, what vendors need to be compliant. And secondly, how do you vet them? How do you vouch for them, for lack of a better word? So anybody that a practice, either small, single location, maybe 5 employees or so, and the big guys, the multi-location practices, the DSOs, for lack of a better word, they all have to vet their vendors. It's actually written into the requirements of HIPAA. And what that basically means is getting a business associate agreement, a BAA, in place with anybody who inadvertently, through no fault of their own, is kind of guilty by association. You see, vendors aren't treating. They're not in the day-to-day operations. They're not face-to-face with the patients. So they have access to stuff, specifically PHI, protected health information, which is someone's name or email address or telephone number. You know, there's 18 identifiers of such. And it can be a little bit daunting to figure out, well, who has access to what? Think of anybody at the practice level that you write a check out to who could possibly see something. So outside IT companies, billing companies, collection agencies, marketing companies, practice management companies, your EagleSofts and your Dentrix and your Open Dentals, the plugins for those like your Curves and your Weaves, eAssist, which is the #1 dental call center here in the US, mConsent, digital forms, which are indeed HIPAA compliant. These are all vendors that have access to something. So vetting them out by asking them, 1, do you have a business associate agreement already in the contract? Most of the time it already is. And 2, are they willing to sign such? We'll give you that green light to work with them, because a business associate agreement, gentlemen, is simply a one-pager. Should be a one-pager. I've seen some that are many, many pages, simply saying, hey, Dr. Smith's office is compliant. mConsent, for example, is compliant, which it is. You will not go after each other if something happens. That's the importance of that. And if anybody signs that business associate agreement, without doing their due diligence, attempting at least to be compliant, it's willful neglect. So if they're not willing to sign, or they don't know what it is, or more so, they give you the thought process of, I'm a small vendor, I don't need to be compliant. I'm not treating patients. I don't have to be compliant.
That's a very common excuse that a lot of dental practices hear every day. And to follow up on that question, I had a doctor who asked me that, hey, I work with an offshore company and I'm building forms and I would like to attach that to my website. And I said there are multiple problems there. If you just think over HIPAA compliancy and the PHI information, who's handling and how they're handling it. So I'll let you continue. So there are questions that come along every day.
Oh my gosh, and you brought up a very, very valid point. In our world, especially in 2024, there are practices, both large and small, that have consultants or have practice management people that help them, or companies that assist in the day-to-day operations of a practice that aren't here in the United States. They could be based in another country, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that at all whatsoever. In my personal opinion, everybody needs to work, bottom line. But if you're in our house, for lack of a better word, you have to play by our rules. So if you're conducting business here in the United States in some way, shape, or form in the healthcare world, you must be compliant regardless of where your business address is, regardless of where your laptop is. That is something which practices have to be very, very careful with in this day and age. Not just forward-facing, I have a call center overnight hours in the Philippines, for example. That is very common. But also layers of the onion. I use a practice management software. Let's talk about EagleSoft as an example, run by Patterson Dental. A lot of their operations are overseas as well. So this is why having that business associate agreement is so crucial, because going down the line, think of branches of a tree. More and more people have access to protected health information, PHI, and you do not want to get blamed for someone else's mess. So having that in place, that get out of jail free card, as I say, helps. And it gives you peace of mind as well.
And I'll tell you, this year has been a shocking year for the healthcare industry. You talk about Change Healthcare, cybersecurity attack that happened earlier this year. Both medical and dental industry was shattered with the amount of the chaos that it created. People not able to bill claims. It's a serious matter, and yes. I think people did not think about it before this, and there were a lot of people now starting asking questions like, "How do I protect my practice?" And that's the reason we are discussing this today. Is like, how do you actually protect your practice? Go ahead, Kelly.
Absolutely, and my goodness, the Change Health fiasco, for lack of a better word, is something which is going to be felt for months, if not years, to come. So many practices, not just in dental, across the board in the medical space, relied on Change Health as their clearinghouse for processing those invoices and processing the billing, coding, and all that good stuff to get their reimbursements, to get what's owed to them. There are practices still waiting on money that they haven't received yet. And of course, United Healthcare is involved. I'll call it the fiasco of 2024. Every year there's a big one, unfortunately. And we always think, how can I protect myself? How can I protect my practice? Whether I'm a one-man shop or maybe I just expanded to a few locations, doing your due diligence, that's the key. And the conversation always evolves around the technology side, the security side of things, being encrypted, having strong passwords across the team, not sharing your passwords. I know some people listening to this share passwords. And the password should not be password. The password should not be admin either. And my goodness, the person that started last week working on the front should not have admin access to everything as well. Assessing your practice, looking to see where the liabilities are and lessening those liabilities. That's what HIPAA is all about. Is it the cure-all that's going to stop a possible cyber attack? Unfortunately not. It is 2024, and no matter how much we want to believe that encryption and backups and firewalls and virus protection is going to block everything, These criminals, these hackers are very, very savvy and they get around things. But as long as you're able to prove due diligence, tried everything in our power, not just on the tech side, but on the administrative side as well. Training your team, having cybersecurity courses so they know what to look for with an email. Or maybe they got a text message from doctor asking for money. It wasn't doctor, I promise. Making sure they read and attest to the policies and what can be shared outside the bubble, outside the practice, on social media and marketing, things of that nature. Having that foundation in place is going to lessen your liability. It's going to standardize operations across the board as well. That will lessen your possibility of something happening, but let's not sugarcoat it. These things are happening every single day. 25% of the time it is happening to single location offices. They just don't get on the news. It's not as sexy as the big guys getting hit with something. So making sure those vendors are compliant, making sure everything is locked down as much as possible is going to protect you and help you sleep at night as well.
Absolutely. Those are wonderful points. And I think that's the best advice you can get from the expert here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, Samad, on your end, I mean, you have experience with tons of dental practices, across the country. In general, you have so much experience with dental practices.
Talking to the security experts and cybersecurity experts and talking to the software guys and talking to the IT companies, I was able to simplify this into a framework that helps dental practices to visualize and see how they can measure themselves. So the framework I call is called as Practice Protection Quadrant, right? So it's a quadrant. Think about it like a 4 boxes, and just check those 4 boxes. And it's mostly what we are discussing here with Kelly. The first quadrant is making sure your vendors are HIPAA compliant, which is BA agreement, and the data encryptions are important. So basically, when you're working with your vendors, making sure that they qualify to serve your practice, right? So you got to check on that qualification part. If your office firewalls have to be in place, and that's all about data encryptions, your vendor due diligence with the vendors, HIPAA compliance, vendors doing a BA agreement. That's your first quadrant. You got to make sure that you check that box. That's number 1. And then number 2, what we are discussing was the access controls, multi-factor authorizations in place, meaning that you can't like I'll give you an example of a practice that had 15 computers with the same password and username and shared across all people. Everybody in the practice used the same thing. Now, when you get an email, if something goes wrong, it's impossible for you to figure out where it went wrong, right? You just made life miserable for yourself by just distributing the passwords and the usernames and everybody using the same username password. That's a recipe for a disaster waiting to happen, right? And also, usually, I would say the technology has been very forgiving in the past. Like people have done this and nothing happened and it's just going fine, but you're not waiting for those fine days. You're waiting for those days that you don't want to see. And that day you will never know when that will happen. So it's always good idea. It's a must now, I would say, looking at what the stories that I'm hearing, it's very, very critical for dental practices to make sure that they take their users seriously, their username, passwords, multi-factor authentication. The leadership is where it all starts. I would say that the leadership have to drive this. It's not going to come bottom to top. It's going to start from whether you're a DSO, whether you own a single practice, but the leadership have to understand that this is the responsibility. I need a data security plan for my practice. If you don't have that, then it creates all kind of issues. So the quadrant that I'm talking about, on top of it, is that leadership have to adopt this. If the practice leadership, if the DSO leadership adopts this framework, and they say that, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to make this happen. Everyone has to do multi-factor authentications. You have to have your own username passwords. You just protect yourself in a better way. And the third thing I will tell, which I think Kelly has emphasized on, is the training. The employee training is the number one protective layer that you're going to have on your practice or your practices. Because have you heard about, I heard about new jargons every day. You heard about phishing. Now I'm hearing about vissing, and I'm hearing about smishing. You know what that is? I mean, like, smishing is basically people are trying to fool you and get your information through SMS system.
Yes.
Phishing is basically they call you and they try to get critical information from you using your voice. I mean, they call you and get this information. So there are new jargons coming up every day because of all this cybersecurity issues. And I just wanted to actually take a moment here. And it's funny enough that I'm preparing for this podcast and I get this a phishing example email, and I would love to share this with our group here who's watching this to see what kind of sophistication is there now, where people are able to. I just want to make sure you guys can see my screen when I share it. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Look at this email. This is an example of how people try to get information from you.
Mm-hmm.
So it says there's important notice, your access ID is restricted, immediate action required. And this is not an email. This is shared through Google Drive. And this is from this person, okay? BYRAHAGG, whatever that is, right? But it says Bank of America Security. Wow, right? Bank of America is emailing me and they're saying that immediate access restoration assistance, something very important here. Now, if I'm somebody who's not trained on this, which your staff is going to make the mistake of going and opening it and downloading it, it's just going to be a possible chaos. Something is going to get downloaded and it's going to be a ransomware attack. And I'll tell you that Dr. David Chai, Care First Dental Management, I was reading about his story. He said that one of his employees actually did this.
Mm-hmm.
They went and downloaded, and it was a ransom attack, and entire office shut down. Second story. I am talking to my friend, owns 4 offices, and he got a call from his dentist friend, and he's like, I got screwed. Like, what happened? I got shut down by ransomware. I can't see patients. I can't schedule patients. I don't know what to do. What should I do? The guy just called me and he said he won $110,000.
Yep.
And he called, I think he said he called the FBI office to find out what he can do. But I think he didn't share this, but I think he paid because he was back online in 2 days.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
And the hard part is he took a loan for that. Yeah. Can you imagine that? He took a loan for that, and that's crazy. You can't be, you can't put yourself in the situation where people, by doing this, this framework is what we build for, to help people to understand that if you do the steps, you can protect yourself to an extent. Always there are controllable things, there are uncontrollable things.
Exactly.
But by putting in place what you control, you at least put yourself in a place where you find yourself in peace, that you did everything that needs to be done, right? So, I mean, these stories actually are eye-opening, which tells the importance of protecting your practice and taking it seriously. And, coming back to the third quadrant that I was talking about, which is the training and audits, train your employees. And I think there's a best practice out there, which I would like to talk about training. When it came to training, what one of the doctors that I know did is that he would actually work with his IT company to create a phishing email, a mock-up phishing email, and send it to his employees and see who's clicking on it. And when they click on it, they know who clicked on it, right? So then they will go and train that employee. And then they talk about this as like, listen, then they won't actually tell this employee did this, but they will say that, hey, we had a failure in our cybersecurity training here just because we did this mock-up test and we failed, basically, right? And everybody has to get trained on it. And then they will bring in new things. So every few months, and for him, it's 2 times a year, but people can do quarterly, yearly, whatever they want to do. But having something in place, a training program and a mock-up drill, like a fire drill, right? You have a fire drill.
Exactly.
You have to put that in place where your employees are trained to identify how does phishing looks like, and how does people try to get your information, your PHI information. It's not okay for you to share a patient information on the phone if somebody calls and says that, hey, I'm the spouse, can you tell me what's happening? You can't do that.
You can't. And people don't realize that, but it's my husband, but you did not list them on the form. People do bad things. Absolutely. I apologize. You were about to say.
The last one I have on my quadrant. So the first one is the, making sure the vendors are I'm losing the word, but the data is encrypted. The vendors are due diligence with the vendors, and making sure that the people that you're trusting, you sign a VA agreement with that. Second one is having an access control, making sure the MFAs are in place, no sharing of passwords, doing everything that you can do in your office properly with the passwords. And the third thing is the training and audits in place, making sure that you have a training program in place, treating this as a fire drill every few months, identifying how does the phishing looks like, how do you protect yourself. And the fourth one is also is super important. And the fourth one is basically going to save you big time if you do this properly, which is backup, and recovery.
Yes.
If you cannot back up, people say it costs money. Probably $1,000 a year, but what you're going to save yourself is from a huge hassle. And again, you got to talk to your IT company. It's not just the backup. What you got to do is that you got to do another mock-up drill and tell your IT company, I will be down on Friday morning at 7:00, and I want everything recovered by 8:00 in the morning. Can you recover everything? And I'm going to test it, what you have recovered. So I'm making sure I'm not losing any data. And the IT company is responsible. They got to sign this, that if something goes wrong, they're able to recover it. And you got to test this out. And you have to continue to do this every few months, every quarter, every 6 months. You have to have your IT company able to recover. Because I'll tell you an example. A doctor office had a backup. When the time came to actually do the recovery, there are multiple failure points there. They're not able to recover. And it's been 2 days, they're not able to recover. Oh, this thing has to happen, that thing has to happen. And so what you got to do is that you got to let them know that, listen, when I say something, I want this back up running in 1 hour. I want this back up running in 4 hours maximum. I can't wait. If you're down at 9:00 in the morning, losing every hour means thousands of dollars, right? So you got to have those kind of plans in place. I would say that that's the practice quadrant. So the 4 quadrants that we talked about is critical for every practice to implement and protect themselves. This is the formula for you to what you can control and how you can protect yourself. And this is after me talking to security experts, IT managers, many dental offices, and working with them on these situations where I feel very bad for them because this is their entire business and they can't do anything about it. And the ransomwares are cruel. I'll tell you that. The people who are doing it, they're cruel. They're not going to give you anything.
Oh, yes. So many of the good, great, valid points. And just to follow up on a couple of them. Ransomware. We're going to talk about that for a brief moment, if that's okay, because you'd be surprised how many practices really don't know what that means, and the phishing attacks and things of that nature. But just to take another step back, IT companies and some offices will tell you, I got a guy. And it might be a friend or family member that really isn't in business. They help you on the side, or it could be a doctor or a team member that's running the technology, the security side of things. And let's be transparent here, everyone. We cannot be great at everything. If we were all great at everything, we would be a very boring group of people. Honestly, everyone has their own expertise. I am not tech savvy at all whatsoever. I'm Generation X. My generation created the technology, and I don't want to learn any more new stuff. Let's be honest. I'm just sick of it. I'm done. So my husband, God bless him, he builds computers. He is the IT guru. If something's wrong, I hand it to him. I say, please fix it. That's the kind of attitude you want to have at the practice level. Doctor cannot control everything. Doctor went to school to learn how to treat patients, to take care of patients. And I can get on a whole tangent about the business side of things and how they do not teach enough about that in dental school, but I digress. You cannot be the billing company or the marketing company or the IT company. This is why vendors, especially in 2024, are so important. Now, granted, your level of security is going to be based not only on your practice size, but your budget as well. But the bare minimums, encryption, virus protection, firewall, and education, not just a good old HIPAA course, but cybersecurity coursework for your team is going to lessen liability dramatically. I cannot stress that enough. But what are you lessening it from? Dr. Smith had a ransomware attack last week, and everyone's talking about it, and his friends told his friends, and his friends told his friends. In the dental world, we all know, we all like to chatter, and everyone's heightened sense of awareness on what we need to do to protect. Well, what are you protecting yourself from? You're walking in the office on a Monday morning, and you're sitting at your desk about to start your day, and your computer doesn't turn on, and neither does the next station or the next station, or worse, your phone lines, which are connected via a voice over internet provider in this day and age, aren't working either. And you attempt to log back in, turn it off, turn it back on. You might even have a message come up on the screen. You have been attacked by ransomware. They're stealing your stuff. You are dead in the water. You cannot see patients. You cannot manage appointments. You cannot manage billing. No phone lines. This happened last year with Aspen Dental and their very, very large ransomware attack that they did not acknowledge for over a month. But once again, I digress. How do you treat? How do you make money for your practice to pay your employees, to pay your bills? Well, if you're compliant, if you're HIPAA compliant, there's a plan in place. We talk about fire drills on the OSHA side. We talk about having plans in place if there's a snow day or a heat advisory day, or God forbid, a natural disaster. What's the plan of action? Is anyone working from home? Why aren't you running drills for your cyber and for your HIPAA overall? The plan in place, a BDR plan, backup disaster recovery, is the way you're going to get back up in a matter of hours versus days, if not weeks, without paying the ransomware. Because quite frankly, the FBI is stated as saying only 25%, 1 out of 4, gets their documents back, gets their information back. So don't pay the ransomware, not at all whatsoever. You followed your HIPAA plan. So you have backups in place, a good old 3-2-1 plan. What is that? You're backed up 3 different ways: passwords and encryption and virus protection. Oh my. And you have it backed up 2 different ways. One might be in the cloud through your practice management software. One might be on servers in-house or elsewhere. And one of those backups is off-site. So when you go in the morning at 9 a.m. and you go to turn the phones on and start seeing patients and you're dead in the water, you don't panic. You had a plan in place. Mary's job is to call the IT company so we can get back up and running. Joe's going to run home and get the flash drives of all the patient information so we can start contacting patients on a laptop we have to the side that is not connected to the server so that we can run some business in the interim. And what did they steal? Well, if you're encrypted, what is encryption? Scrambling of information. They stole scrambled eggs. They didn't get anything. Quite frankly, there's nothing to retrieve back. And it's up for debate whether or not that's a reportable offense in the eyes of the government or not. But ultimately, if you're encrypted and nothing has been taken, patient information, protected health information is safe and secure. You have a plan of action in place. Yes, it's going to cost you some money, extra man hours with the IT company, for example, maybe extra hours for the team to notify people if there is a breach where information got out. But paying a couple of $1,000 for those things versus $100,000 plus ransom, taking a loan out, and to add insult to injury, if you have cybersecurity insurance, it's going to assist you in ways of retrieving that information, extra man hours, things of that nature, maybe getting new equipment if need be. It's not going to pay the fine. If you're found guilty of a HIPAA violation, no insurance company in their right mind is going to pay for that because it's willful neglect. You know what you had to do. You chose for some reason not to do it. You're burning your own house down. That's on you. So a little segue, any insurance company that tells you cyber insurance is going to cover a HIPAA violation from the U.S. government, that is incorrect. That is false per the U.S. government or the Office of Civil Rights. It's not just the lost man hours, lost patient time, and lost finances there. It's the long term. If there is a violation, you're found guilty of paying that, which could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. The patients that you lost because they don't trust you any longer, trust the practice with their information. And also the aftershocks of this. If someone moves into the neighborhood and they're looking for a new practice, and they go on the Facebook Moms group, for example, or they Google search and they see reviews that are poor because of this thing that occurred, you better believe they're going somewhere else instead of you. So the ramifications are long lasting if something like this occurs. Why take that chance when you can simply put a little bit of legwork in at the beginning, have yourself protected, and more importantly, peace of mind more than anything else? You can't put a price on that, guys.
Absolutely. 100%. I think that message was well delivered.
I'm a little bit passionate, a little bit cheesy about this stuff. Been through it, so I get it.
Yeah.
The
hard part is seeing people struggle with this. I know they're super busy in their practice. I'm not saying they have time for this, but it is a necessary evil. That's what I would call it. It's the necessary evil that you have to have in place to protect yourself from major headaches.
For sure.
I used to joke around and call it the dark side of things, the dark side of business, managing compliance, not just for HIPAA, for OSHA, PCI compliance, which is credit card merchant services as well. But really, these are good things. I'll give you HIPAA for the purpose of our discussion. When an office is HIPAA compliant, it standardizes operations. Everyone is trained on what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do, what they're allowed to say and not allowed to say. They have read and attested to the policies of the practice as well. I know when I am trained properly, I am a better employee. That's just common sense. If I have faith in my position, I know what I can and cannot do, that's going to resonate with my patients if I'm chairside and even in the front. And there's no price you could pay for that. To have confidence, it's a morale boost. And then patients are happy with the services. You retain those patients, and they tell their friends, and they tell their friends as well. Also, being HIPAA compliant overall does lessen your liability. And there have been events where insurance rates have gone down because of that, as well as a nice negotiating factor. And if in the future you choose to transition out of your practice, you're retiring, good for you. You have your associate purchasing, or or a third party is purchasing the practice, you better believe that they are looking for due diligence here. They're looking to see what's been done the couple of years prior in reference to HIPAA. They don't want to purchase a mess, for lack of a better word. So getting your ducks in a row ahead of time as you're planning your future with retirements, maybe acquiring another practice, maybe you're buying one as well. This is just common sense, guys. HIPAA is not a necessary evil. It could be seen that way, but in the long run, it helps. And of all people, I understand, extremely short-staffed. The rotation of staff healthcare is the largest vertical in turnover, and not just in the country, the entire world. Can you blame us? I mean, after the pandemic craziness, a lot of people did not want to work in healthcare. So we're hiring people that have never worked in medical at all whatsoever. So that's why training is even more crucial. But take the time. No one says you have to do all of your compliance within a week. It doesn't work that way. Work on it a little bit at a time to show due diligence that you have a work in progress. Make the time. It's an investment in your practice, and it will help you in the long run as well.
Changing gears just a little bit here, but also keeping it in the same conversation. We've had a huge change from going from paper forms into digital forms, right? So question to both of you guys is, how do we keep online forms safe? I think that's just another aspect of keeping that information protected from both areas, from the patient to the practice. How do we keep that online form safe for the patients to have the confidence in filling out those forms, and the practice keeping all of that information protected?
Samad?
Hey, I think it's all about the first point that we talked about, which is due diligence of your vendors. That's the number one thing. I know a practice that they went and hired somebody from offshore, no problem with that, but they hired somebody that's not a registered company, it's an individual. He built the forms, he put it on your website, they're fully not secured, and next day the doctor comes into the office, and this is a real story. The next day doctor comes to office, he sees 500 junk emails, and he's like, what is happening here? Why all these forms are coming in, and I don't even know these people, and there's 500 forms in my email. I'm like, you're just lucky that you just got the forms in your email. You could have got a lot of stuff in your email, and if you clicked it, you could have just lost your practice management system there. So anyways, because there are many people, they don't understand it. They don't work in healthcare. They don't understand the critical aspect of protecting the PHI information, HIPAA information. So the vendors have to, you have to do your due diligence on the vendors. There is no doubt on that. And the vendors have to make sure that they do proper encryptions, where the encryptions are protecting the data transfers that are happening from vendors, from the patients to the office, and the office to the patients, whether it's not just forms, it could be scheduling, it could be patient engagement, it could be any information, insurance information, billing information, all kinds of information.
Yes.
It needs to be encrypted, and the vendor management is the most important thing there.
Agreed. Absolutely. You have to vet your vendors, guys. This is just the way of the world nowadays. You're making 45 phone calls and looking all over the internet for reviews for a new refrigerator. Why would you not do that for a vendor that you'll be working with in a possible long term as well? If you're, and not to say all doctors, all dentists are on the golf course, but if you're on the golf course with a buddy of yours and they say, I got a guy and I can refer you over, he's great, I got him really, really cheap, and so on and so forth. It's not something you want to skimp on. It's your practice's livelihood. That's the key. And then I have practices that tell me, we don't want digital. We don't want online patient forms. We want the patients to come in and go through 8 pages line by line. Couple of things you want to take into consideration. That's not what the patients want. Recent study last year, newest U.S. News and World Report, they did a study on patient engagement, and 66%, 2/3, want online access. They want a portal where they can schedule appointments, pay bills, fill out those forms. I go to the doctors and I get a pop-up notification from the portal or an email. Fill out your forms ahead of time. So when I walk in, I'm good to go. I might sign my name at the front, and it makes the staff's job even easier because they're spending less time. You want to spend time with your patients, of course, but it's lessening the time at the front gate, at the desk. Patients want access to online options. You give the patients what they want, so you keep your patients. As much as we love our patients, and so we have some like family throughout the years, you're still running a business. And you need to keep food on the table for everybody. So giving the patients what they want is crucial. Also, so things can be updated in real time. So that somebody can, I just got married, let me update my online form so my husband has permission. 2 weeks later, I hate this guy, I'm getting an annulment. Let me update this information. So there is no confusion. When there is a phone call on the spouse, why can't I talk to them? Or updating phone numbers, because we change phone numbers nowadays very, very easily, or just updating communication preferences. Yes, I can receive email, text, so on and so forth. Having an online way to update these things, not only is it going to standardize operations on the practice level, but give the patients what they want, so you keep the patients overall.
Absolutely. And the business efficiency is a major reason why businesses or dental practices make a decision to be more efficient, to be more productive, where that's why they digitize, right? Going from paper forms to online forms, going from phone call scheduling to online scheduling, reputation management, you talk about EMR systems, everything is just because it makes business sense to be more efficient. And then the risk that comes with that, you got to manage it. You got to mitigate with the processes and policies in place, having right procedures in place. And that's the name of the game. That's what it takes for you to be profitable, to make sure that you're able to do things the way you want to do things and be productive and, be profitable.
Absolutely. And it's not just, we talk about HIPAA in this conversation. These are just good business practices overall. When it comes to OSHA, keeping the team secure, keeping the patients safe as well. Same guidelines, writing policies, training everyone, assessing, so on and so forth. If you're doing financials, you're auditing yourselves for tax purposes, things of that nature. You're running the same type of processes. This is not something where you're reinventing the wheel. This is how business should be run, period. Whether you are that one-man shop of 5 employees, or you're the big guys that are overwhelming, having a really hard time keeping up with things because they're growing so rapidly. And that really, it's all other conversation. These things get away from people as the locations blow up and grow. Having a good foundation in place from the get-go is going to help standardize that as you are taking over the world, as I say.
One point that I want to make for people who are working with marketing companies who are looking to bring in new patients to your practice, just so you know, they still need to comply and
Yes.
they need to sign BA agreement. So if they're not your patient, it doesn't mean anything because they're trying to find information to become your patient, right? And in that process, if somebody's helping you to gather that information and providing it to you so you can call them and set up an appointment, that all information needs to be protected. Just a side note.
Oh, yes. Story time on that. So last year, a single location dental practice in North Carolina hired a marketing company, not just to solicit new patients, but to grow their existing patient list as well. So the marketing company had the entire patient list to market to for email campaigns and send coupons in the mail, things of that nature. Wonderful. Nice way to grow your practice. Strike number 1 was they did not have a business associate agreement in place. The practice never asked them if they were compliant. Strike number 2, the marketing company was working on servers and things of that nature. The company was not compliant. That's the bottom line. Strike number 3 was when the marketing company, one of the owners, took the patient list, shared it with a friend of theirs who happened to be running for senator.
Ouch.
So that way they could take the list, the entire patient list, 1,500, 2,000 people, and solicit them for contributions, funds, and for their vote. Strike 3. Guys, this is not the way this works. Not how any of this works at all whatsoever. So not only was the practice given a fine, the marketing company as well was given a fine. There was criminal indictments against third parties as well. It can get very messy very fast. And this is all from a single location practice in a rural area of North Carolina as well. So it could happen to anybody.
Well, great. Hopefully for all the listeners out there, you guys have gained some good nuggets to help you go through and be compliant for one. I'd like to thank Samad and Kelly for joining us today. Before we go, this has been Protecting Your Practice with mConsent and Compliancy Group. Any last additives you guys would like to add in for anyone listening today?
I will say, don't be afraid of HIPAA. It's not as bad as you think. Get yourselves compliant so that you can sleep at night and not have to worry about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for coming on our podcast. It's been amazing to have you. We learn ourselves when we have you here on our podcast, and it's an honor to have you here. One thing, there's a question that people usually ask, what does mConsent does? So we do help people on 3 different aspects. The first one is digitizing the patient intake portion of it, streamlining your operations, helping you digitize your practice in a secure way. That's number 1. The number 2 is that we help with securely helping practices with digitizing of the forms. Number 2, we help with patient communication, 2A text messaging. Number 3, we help with patient growth, which is basically with treatment plan acceptance, improvement, collecting the payments, 2A text messaging. So there are multiple ways that we help our practices. So that's what mConsent does in short.
And mConsent is indeed fully compliant. They go through a rigorous process annually to make sure of such. That's why we feel confident supporting them in their journey to helping more dental practices across the country. Compliancy Group, the company I work with, is the sole endorsed provider of both HIPAA and OSHA education and software to the mothership, to the ADA, the American Dental Association, and most associations thereafter, the states, the local societies, but also the American Academy of Orthodontists, endodontists, the Academy of Pediatric Dentistry as well. We help educate first and foremost, whether it's a simple conversation, helping a practice on some questions, or whether it's a full webinar teaching people what to do step by step. We're always here and happy to help with such. On the business side, the Guard, which is our proprietary software that we created many, many years ago, helps practices achieve their internal compliance with an automated system that actually dots the I's and crosses the T's for you, which saves so much time. Tracking everything from start to finish so nothing gets fallen through the cracks. And training, one of the most important pieces of the puzzle here, training for all the staff, doctors included, not just on good old HIPAA 101, but all the OSHA requirements, your bloodborne path, your infectious disease control, HAZCOM, so on and so forth, and cybersecurity training. Whether it's a quick 5-minute blurb or a 30-minute course on the newest ransomware craziness, that is all inclusive of the services that we provide on the business side of things. Also, current members of just about every association do receive a discount through the ADA directly. So if anyone has any questions about the business side, feel free to reach out.
Kelly's the person if you have questions on compliance part.
Absolutely. And if anyone needs to learn more about Compliancy Group, you can find them at compliancygroup.com. And any more about mConsent, you can find them and us at mconsent.net.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Been a pleasure. Thank you all again.